6, a helping hand with your land.
Neil from Essex here. Today's 3-Minute Thursday. Today's short conversation is going to be how to show you how to save $14,000 on a 40 horsepower tractor. I'm a frequent participation on Facebook groups and internet message boards. It's one of the places that I learned so much about tractors and equipment and started to understand a lot about how people interact with them in an ownership stance, because on the dealership side, we understand machines in the parking lot, but oftentimes don't know what happens to them after they leave here. I chuckle a little bit every time that I see somebody in one of these groups trumpeting that they saved huge amounts of money buying a tractor. Oftentimes people do a really poor job of really going through and understanding the complexities of these products. A tractor is far more than just its model number, and when we look at these machines, the values and the pricing of them can wildly swing depending on how they're equipped and the kinds of features that they come with. Probably the most common thing that you'll notice is that people will make comparisons between different brands and different models based solely upon horsepower. Right here beside me is a Kubota L4060. Now this is obviously a cab tractor, but it's also a very deluxe machine. It has an electronically controlled hydrostatic transmission in it, a very powerful deluxe hydraulic system. It's a great, well-equipped tractor, but it sits at the premium end of the market as far as the features and equipment goes for the kind of horsepower that it has. Beside me here is an L3901. This is a 39 horse tractor, right? 39 and 40 horsepower, but sits at the economy end of the range of equipment. It's a little bit older design mechanically. It's more simple. When you sit in the seat, it's kind of a no frills tractor. Both of these machines being basically exactly the same horsepower, but being priced literally $14,000 apart from each other. And that's something you so frequently will see when somebody goes through and compares between brands based solely upon horsepower, but doesn't take the time to understand the intricacies of a machine's hydraulic system and its weight and its transmission and all the things that go into that. If you go in and you look at the tractor market as a whole and the dozen or so companies that are out there and make equipment, the spread in pricing between, call it the top half dozen. There's a bottom part of the market that sells so few machines they hardly count. If you take the top brands, the ones that have a good dealer support and a decent dealer network behind them, if you see a spread of about 10% between the least expensive and the most expensive brands, that's generally about it. When you're making a real true apples to apples comparison, when those price differences start to expand among that 10% or so, more likely than not, there's going to be some differences when you dive into tires and equipment and implements and those kinds of things. So understand that if you go through and you look at these machines and you see those wild differences, there's probably a reason for that. This market is more competitive than that, and these companies don't get away with asking these wild premiums for a piece of equipment. It's a lot more down to the dollar when it comes to making the deals. Particularly, a lot of these machines are sold into more of those agricultural applications and the contractors where we're concerned about the revenue that these machines are going to produce. They're not just purely fun purchases like they are for many people. There's some real economic drivers here as well. Those price differences are going to add up to some significant numbers when you start to get into bigger equipment. So when we move up into 100 horsepower tractors and above, that's when you'll start to see a lot bigger swings in the pricing. It's a lot more variability up there in the equipment, and it's a lot harder to make exact brand-to-brand comparisons just because those big machines can become so complex and things like their transmissions can be such drivers behind the pricing. Now, there is one area that you can have a real legitimate difference in the cost of the out money in a deal, and that'll happen with trade-ins. They can cause a lot of funny things to happen with the numbers on a tractor purchase. A place like us, we tend to be mostly wholesale trades, so we're going to give you the money that we're actually going to put into this unit and then mark it up and sell it from there. You're going to find some places that are going to go through and pad the prices of trade-ins. They're going to push the selling price of that new machine way up in order to show you a little bit more money on the value of your trade-in and make you feel a little bit better about it. When you go through and you compare that against a dealership that may not be using those same techniques, the price spread on those tractors might start to look a lot wider. Say maybe even taking one tractor and pushing it up even over the manufacturer's MSRP in order to fluff the numbers of the trade-in. I personally feel really uncomfortable about that. I feel like we get burned more often than not when you try to do those kinds of things, but that is fairly common practice in a lot of different places. The overall real wholesale value that a dealership puts into a trade-in can vary a lot from place to place. It's a place like us where we have a really strong marketing presence. We get a lot of buyers for our equipment. A lot of times we have a good service history system in our computers that we know the parts that you've bought, the times that we have seen a machine in the shop for periodic maintenance. When you can see that kind of stuff, that encourages a dealership to really put a good value into that machine because you can flip it and find a buyer for it very quickly. Take that same machine down to a dealership that doesn't regularly take trade-ins or is a shady used car lot that sells tractors on the side. They're not going to be nearly as willing to take the risk on a piece of equipment like that as a more established real equipment dealership is. So when you start to make deals a lot more complex by including trade-ins and that kind of stuff, yes, when you start comparing the top level 2 machines that you're buying new, you might start to see some funny things happen. Another thing you want to take into account when you make comparisons like this is the non-tangible things that come along with the tractor itself. Things like what the warranty looks like, what the coverage is of insurance policies that are often required when financing machines, if there's cash discounts offered, how substantial are they? And most importantly, I'm going to sit and say, giving myself some credit here, the dealership that you're buying from. A lot of the equipment that's out there in the market is very similar to each other. The quality of it is all fairly good regardless of the manufacturer that you're buying from, but you'll find some wild differences in the quality of the dealerships that back these products. So I would put a huge value behind, the parts sales and service department of the organization that's selling you that machine as really being worth some substantial value in your value calculation when you're considering making a significant purchase like this. So I always chuckle when I see some of these claims of huge savings online. Anytime that I've ever gone and probed a little bit and asked a couple of leading questions, it becomes apparent very quickly that people that make these claims might be really excited about a deal that they felt like they got, but they probably really missed some key details about the machines that they were comparing when they're making these statements, because they just simply are not true of what happens in the market as a whole. So if you're shopping for a piece of equipment and we can help, or if you have parts or service needs, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at Messick's.com.